Okay, well, I have a card. This is called a double diamond fold card. I made this for a friend recently. She loved it. I just stamped some things on here and wrote a greeting. Well, I stamped on either flap, and then I wrote on the inside. You can do whatever you want. You can decorate it as you like, but I thought I'd just show you how to use some of your editing tools. And also, Die Delight has been posting a lot of really nice edges, and I used part of one of her edges and curved it a bit. And somebody was asking in the forum this week, how do we curve those edges? So I thought this would be a good card to show you how you might use some. She posted nearly 100 edges in the Make the Cut gallery that are free to use. So you can use them to create lots of interesting designs. Well, I will start first with this, the card design. I made mine 12 by 12, and it's going to be 7 inches tall. So rather than put squares and triangles and everything together like I usually do, I found it pretty easy just to draw. So I clicked on the Bezier Draw tool, which is the 4th icon on the left. If you don't see a left toolbar, click on this figure 8 in the upper left corner to open the node editing toolbar. And the other thing, when I'm drawing, I use a snapping, and I'm going to use snap to a 1/2 inch because all my lines are going to be on the 1/2 inch marks. So to do the diamond fold, I'm going to start with, again, the Bezier Draw tool and click at halfway down. The length is 7, so halfway is 3.5, and then up to 1.5, so left click again, all the way across to 1.5 inches from the edge, left click, down again to 3.5, left click, then in 1.5 inches down to 7 here, left click, to 1.5 from the side, left click, and then left click at home, and we've got our card. I'll change that to a lighter color here. Make sure that I got it the way it's supposed to be. 1, 2, 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. Looks good. So now I'm going to add a new layer by clicking on the larger green plus icon in the lower right corner. And so that added a layer up on top, and now I'm going to put in my score lines, and they'll all be added to that layer instead of being combined with a shape. I'm going to switch over to green so that we can see those lines a little bit better. The middle 3 inches of this card are going to be for the greeting and the decorative part, so we'll have 1.5 inches from the center on either side. So I left click there and left click at the bottom, right click at the bottom, sorry, and again 1.5 inches from the center on the right, left click and right click, and then 1.5 inches from this point. At 4.5 inches we have one, and then there was at the 3-inch mark we're going to make another score line. So left click, right click, and left click and right click. The final lines that need to be made, make the X's so that you can do the diamond fold. So to do that, I'm going to left click at the lines where the center is and right click at the corner of the diagonal line. then do the same thing at the top. Start at the corner, left click, and then right click here. So now we have an X here, and these folds will be, this will be mountain folds, this will be valley fold, this will be mountain and valley, and then the opposite over here. So we do the same thing here, left click and right click, left click and right click. With having snapping on, I don't have to worry about my shaky hands. It just snaps right to the corner, so it's just click, 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 click. I love that. Now, if you're better with the pencil tool, you could do click and drag if you want it. But this is the card, and it's ready to cut and fold. And you want to make sure that if you're not using, if you're using the blade, you don't want to keep the solid line. You want to make your score lines dashed. But if you're using an embossing tool and want to emboss those folds, you would just leave the lines solid or no dashes, like we had them. I usually change mine to dash lines for a visual effect, just in case I forget to put my scoring tool in and my blade starts going to work and chops my project all up. You can put an embossing tool in, and since it's on its own layer, you could emboss the dash lines if you'd like. So that's the basic card here. The next thing, if we look at the photo, we go to the contrast. I had a circle in here and then a piece of delights edges here. So that'll be what we do next. So on this page, I'll just add another layer. Maybe I'll do a new page here so I can work without any distraction. What I want to do is add an oval. I get an oval from the basic shapes. I can just type OV and grab one. I happen to add my oval that I like to use, which is for this project, but I can use the generic oval and then resize it. The oval I need to be, I'm going to need it 3 by 4, so I'm going to unlock this lock icon so I can enter 3 for the width and 4 for the height, then press enter, and that gives me the oval that I want for this card. The next thing that I want to do is get the border that I want. Now I wrote down the number of the border here. Oh, it's edges, 61 through 66 in the gallery. So if I click on the gallery icon, it looks like a tic-tac-toe board at the top of the screen. And if I go into here, I typed in edge and search, then I can look at the numbers. She numbered these sets. She has groups of these edges, and the number that I want is 61 through 66, which is right here. So click on the download, and that opens a new file, and the edge that I want to use is right over here. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to close the gallery. I'm going to use Control-C to copy or edit copy, and then go back to my page over here, and you can go to edit, paste in place, or Control-Shift-V. I'm going to rotate this, and the first thing I need to do is determine how tall I really want this to be. Right now it's a little over 2 inches, and I need it to be, I'll put the lock icon to keep the aspect ratio, but I would like this to be 1.5 inches tall, so I'll type 1.5 and press enter. So I have the height that I want. Since my card is 7 inches, I don't want the circle with the decorations to be more than 7 inches. So I'm going to turn off the snapping because everything that I do here I don't need snapping for. And what I'm trying to do is, first of all, remove portions of this design that I don't need. I want to keep 3 of these tall parts and 4 of the arched sections in here. So to do that, I'm going to type 4 and 3, so I'm zoomed into it. I'm going to move over here and find the sections that I want, 1, 2, 3, and here, so I can see most of what I need right in this screen here. And there are a number of different ways you could use the eraser tool, but I found it pretty simple just to click on this node editing tool, the second arrow from the top, and I'm going to click right close to the part that I want to keep to select a little segment and hit delete. Now right here, there's nothing really close to what I want. I want to connect a straight line here, so I'm going to double click, and then I'm going to click that little piece I don't want and delete. Then I'm going to go around to here, and this is where I want to trim this away, so I'm going to left click and delete, left click and delete, and there's a little curved hook I don't want. Now right here it's connected to another piece, so left click and delete, left click and delete, and I think there's a little curve there too. And then I need to connect this at the bottom, so I'm going to double click here and delete there, make a delete there. So now that I've separated everything, I can now click on this draw tool and left click on that dot, right click on that dot. This is just connect the dots. If you ever did dot to dot as a kid, that's what this is. Left click, right click, left click, right click, left click, and right click. So when the color comes back, you know that you've closed that shape. Now we're zoomed way out, and some of these lines aren't perfect, but that's okay because we're not going to see them anyway. But we do need to select it because these lines are still connected. We want to use split to separate now from those little pieces that we no longer need. And I don't need any of this, so I'm just going to select it and delete it. I deleted the wrong thing. So just drag around the pieces you don't need and delete, and now we have a nice piece with the part of the design that I wanted. Now we can try to wrap this around the oval, but if you stretch and wrap, it's going to want to wrap around the entire shape. I found it quite a bit easier just to go ahead and draw a line that I want to wrap this to, because I only want it wrapping to the top part of the design. So I'm going to left click on the Bezier Draw, and here I'm going to use my snapping because drawing is a little easier this way. I want to make a line from about here, left click, to about here, right click, and that's where my snapping is not very helpful, because if you ever find your lines are not going where you want, check your snapping. If you bend a line, just right click and convert to line. Then you can left click on the end and drag it, left click and drag it to exactly where you want it to be. And now I want to click right in the middle of that line, which has got a plus there. I'm going to left click and push up so that the line follows the line of my oval. I can kind of move it around. I really would like this line to be about the same size as my oval, because I'll be welding this. If you want to, you can left click and you have handles here that will help you mold and shape that line where you want it. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it could be close. That would be helpful. So you see that I've now got a line here. What I want to do is wrap this piece to this curve. To do that, I'm going to hold the Control key, left click on the design and drag it over the line, and as soon as my cursor changes to triangle, circle, square, as it just did, I'm going to release the mouse and release the control key, and then I'm going to get this wrap objects to path menu. I have warp selected, stretch selected, and parameterize, and it helps to have a flatten checked by at least one. And I do have a question on this one, Brian, if you're here. Why I can't change it back to 1. It's on 5 right now, and every time I click it, it gets bigger.
What happens if you click it again?
Now it's 1. I never could get it to go back to 1.
It should
every
just
time
rotate
I
through.
Yeah. Okay, so it goes up to 5 and rotates through. Is that it?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Well, that explains that. Now you see it's not quite on the line. I can change the vertical alignment by just nudging it over here a bit. I think it would be on 100%. It should be perfect. Yes, it is. Offset changes where it starts from right to left, and I'm looking at this design and want the center of the design to be right near that line. And so I can use my keyboard keys to kind of visually center this on the line that I made. And you can extend the line a little bit. I mean, the design by hitting the arrow keys. I can left click to kind of give me a little more movement around the circle, and I think that's really fine. So I'm going to click on accept, and so now I have a curved version of Die's nice border edges. Now what I want to do is line this up with the top of my oval, and if you can zoom in, I'll type 4 and 3 to just zoom real close to get it lined up as best I can. And you can use your arrows. You can select both and type V, vertical align, to try to get it aligned, but sometimes the shape is not exactly centered, so it might not be centered to your oval. I'm going to slide out of the zoom again, and the next part of this is to duplicate that so that I have the same design at the top and bottom. So I'll click away, just select just the top part, and hold Control and Shift and drag, and then I'm going to flip it and then move it into place at the bottom. And to get it lined up, I can select both of these and type V so that they're aligned to each other. I'll select also the oval and see if they will line up okay. So this little border on the little edge on the design here can overlap with the oval, and I can select all 3 holding the Shift key, and then I can weld it. But before I do, I want to check the size. I guess it's okay. So now we can look at the whole design, and keep in mind that we have almost 100 of these shapes we can work with, and you can edit them in like manner to create all kinds of effects. Now I'm going to just Control C, copy, and go back to my page over here with the card, click on Add a New Layer, and I'm going to Control Shift V, put my design here, and it's supposed to be 3 inches wide, but It doesn't appear to be 3 inches wide. Oh, look, it's 3.835. So I'm going to resize it down to 3 inches wide and press enter so that it will fit on my card. It doesn't have to be exactly 7 inches tall, but it would be nice if it fits between those folds. The oval was the right size, but the design was a little wider than the oval, and if I decide I want to change that a bit, I can go back here and undo. And if you haven't closed the program, you can actually undo that weld, and we could make this part, delete one of them and rework this a little so that it is adjusted to 3 inches. And it changes the curve a bit, but the nice thing, we have a little distortion handle here. We can change the shape by just clicking to toggle to the little distortion handles, and you can make it go exactly where you want it to be. I know it's changing the width of my design, so you get the idea here that you can edit this. Well, maybe the top part is just making it too wide. I can distort this a bit up so that I'm getting closer to my 3-inch guide there. And you can edit these as much as you like. So once I get it to close to my 3 inches, I can type in 3 inches. It probably won't matter too much. But I do need it to be a total of 3 inches. That's one of the parameters that I have. So you can play with your design that way. The next part if we look at the photo, to decorate it, I added a scallop circle and then another oval in there. So we can do an inset shadow if we want it perfectly sized from this by just clicking on the shadow layer. That's the 4th icon from the right on the bottom toolbar. You can inset that as far as you want. Maybe I'll use a 0.15 inches and accept. If you want to add a scalloped oval in there, I think I saved a scalloped oval to your shapes. Yes, there it is. I'll double click that, and I can put that inside of this oval, or I could actually resize it to be bigger than this oval. Let's see.
Julie?
Yes.
When you said you did an inset, you didn't have minus.
Oh, I made it big. That's right. Okay. So I can eyeball it here and just drag on the straight arrows on the corner. That'll keep the aspect ratio. Then if I want to do the oval again, I can do the inset, and we'll do the minus this time. Minus 0.1. And that's not quite small enough, so see, you can see the preview here. It's still a little bit big, so maybe a little bit more. There we go. So I have a little oval here. I have the edges of the scalloped oval here, and then a bigger oval here. Now you could just glue this onto the oval itself, or you could weld it, as I did before. I'm not going to play with this anymore right now, but I do want to show you the other thing that I added to this was panels for the card itself. And, you can add decorations inside or out, front or back, whatever you would like to, decorative paper. Let's see, if I go back here to this page, I found it easiest to add these decorative panels by just putting the snapping, instead of a 1/2 inch, put it at 1/4 of an inch and add a new layer. Click on my Bezier Draw tool and just left click. Don't want that. Close to where I was. Wants to snap. Okay. So I go close to the places where I drew my original line, just left clicking and then left clicking at the end. So you can get your shapes there for your backgrounds. If you want one here, left click, and if you wanted them 1/8 of an inch, you could do that. So then you can draw your pieces to cut out of your pattern paper. So that is pretty much how I did this double diamond fold card design.